The warm-up dance.
Well, hello,
That's what got you the gig,
everybody.
right?
We are live on YouTube. I'm Amy Taylor. I am Oh My Carlisle on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, and everywhere else. You can find me every Tuesday night with my friend Mel on Twilight Tuesdays on Instagram, where we've been rereading the Twilight books. We're on Breaking Dawn right now in the Jacob section. So join us at 7 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays. Back in the day, I worked on hisgoldeneyes.com and pagetopremiere.com. And so now you can find me usually on Instagram. But we're gonna do round robin so everybody can introduce themselves. We're calling this Midnight Sun Thursdays, but we're done Midnight Sun and it's not Thursday. So we're like lexicon gathering, I guess. But I'm gonna hand it over to Heather to say hello.
We can have a contest to name it.
Oh,
Thing that we do.
I love the intro of it's not Midnight Sun and it's not Thursday. It's Friday. Hey, what's up, guys?
Fandom chat. Yay! Okay, so who's introducing themselves first?
Me. I will. I'm Heather. It's HD Gilbert on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything you can find me on. And I am obsessed with Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. And I once interviewed Kristen Stewart at a castle in England. And also the horses that I rode in Pop Sugar were used in Bridgerton. And I'm really excited about that. So that's my new happiness.
Nice.
well, the ones that Daphne rides?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm like, I rode that horse. I rode it.
Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kara, formerly Illuminate on Twilight Moms, and now back as Kara O on Twilight Moms. We are back again, twilightmoms.net. Also on Twitter and finally on Instagram. Find us wherever you need us for the over 25 Twilight fan set. Say that 5 times fast. And I'm so happy to be back at Fabulous Fanside Fridays.
Oh, there we go. Wait, is it 25? I thought they lowered the age.
Oh, you're right. You can be 21 now. Actually, technically, you could be 18 because no one's really caring about the age as much anymore. But that used to really be a thing. Now it's basically, are you over 18? Do you love Twilight? Are you embarrassed that you're in love with a 107-year-old vampire? Come join us.
Not at all.
Greatest commercial.
my vampire's even older, so
It's true.
He's in love with one
True.
that's, 300 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go over to Kat with her awesome background.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Kat. You can find me at CatRod77 on basically anything. I'm one of the ladies of Al Esme. I've been a fan since about 2008. And I love Rosalie and Emmett, so tonight's going to be very interesting.
Oh, but the biggest stan of all is Melissa. So, I love Carlisle. Rose is her girl. So, Mel.
I love her in the same way. I'm Melissa or Mel. You can find me Rosalie85 on pretty much anything, or just Rosalie if you search that. I used to run a fan site on Facebook back in the day, but that's now depleted. And now I'm part of Ladies of Al Esme with Kat. Our mutual love of Rosalie is actually one of the founding things that brought us together when we first met. And fun fact, my top is a Rosalie top tonight.
Yay! Yay for as seen in. And Miss Lori.
I'm Lori. You can find me at the Twilight Lexicon, wherever, just Twilight Lexicon. We don't have a TikTok. We have a
TikTok.
Facebook.
It's okay.
We don't, yeah, I just put the TikTok app on my phone, and I've been watching it going, I don't get this.
Just give it some time to get to know you. The For You page will become really familiar. It'll be so good.
I don't know, Lori.
Eventually, you'll love it.
No,
I-
Instagram.
The other day apparently went viral because it's up to over 100,000 views. So, huh?
What went viral?
Something I posted.
Oh,
Sweet.
that's
Well, you also have the people telling me I don't have to don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm like, oh, in regards to Twilight, well, F you, but
They don't know who they're talking to.
they don't know who they're talking to.
because There are certain things I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think we all know what we're talking about when we talk about Twilight. Yeah. Or I wouldn't invite you here. Great. So tonight is the long-awaited Rosalie and Emmett chat. And I know that Mel is like, she's full on Rosalie. There's, look at her, she's all dressed up and ready to go. Well, then there's others of us that are like, Rosalie. So it's good that we have two really strong Rosalie supporters, and we're gonna ask some hard questions about Rosalie, and maybe you guys can change your minds a little bit about her. You think?
If I haven't changed Amy's mind already, it's never gonna happen.
We're also checking the chat, so if you have some questions or some comments, we'll check the chat every now and then and make sure that we're including you into our discussion. So we're just going to start with the easiest kind of a question to ask. And even if you don't like Rosalie, you have to have a favorite Rosalie moment. So what is your favorite Rosalie moment? And I'd like to try to stick to the books, because we'll talk about the movies later, because there's a difference between Rosalie and the books and the movies. So what is your favorite Rosalie moment? And just because you've been waiting so long, Mel, we have to start with you.
So despite what everybody's probably going to think, while the entire backstory in Eclipse is wonderful and it opens up a light and shines a light on exactly what happened with Rosalie, my favorite moment actually is at the end of New Moon, or towards the end of New Moon, when the family comes back or goes to the airport to pick up Edward, Alice, and Bella. Rosalie just kind of stands off to the side in wait because she knows she screwed up. And she lets Carlisle and Esme, more so Esme, have her moment of like, how dare you? Why would you do this to me? She stands back and waits because she knows that she needs to apologize. And that to me was a moment that gave Rosalie that sense of humanity and also showed that she can endure humility because she knew she screwed up. And that's probably not something most people would have expected of her.
I think that's a great point. I'm like, well, now maybe we just move on to the next question. No, but I'm gonna take it from the most outspoken Rosalie lover to the person that doesn't like Rosalie the most. Amy.
Wow.
Rosalie moment.
Okay, so I'm apparently the total Rosalie hater. I have thoughts and feelings. So I will say my favorite part is the obvious one, her telling her story. We went through 2 books of really not knowing anything about Rosalie, why she was the way she is, the way she is. And at least we get this insight. Now, I still have problems with everything about that story and the choices that she makes, but having that time and actually hearing, where she came from, what happened to her, I appreciated that, finally getting to that moment in Eclipse.
I think it explains a lot about who she is and why she acts that way.
Yeah, it doesn't make her any better as a character, but at least you understand why she is as awful as she is. So.
Oh no! See, we're throwing it down already. It's been thrown down.
I'm so stressed out.
She's like, because he looked like my friend's baby, I changed Emmett. So
hold that thought, because we're going to talk about that. Okay. When we talk about Rosalie and Emmett together, we'll talk about that. Cara, what is your favorite Rosalie moment? Is it
my favorite Rosalie moments are mostly in Breaking Dawn, as she's coming to more or less Bella. Okay, really, it's the baby's defense, but Bella's defense. And the fact that her and Jacob wind up having this weird, tenuous friendship over protecting Renesmee above all else. And I think it's hysterical the way they go back and forth with each other, but I think it's a real cute, like, brother-sister relationship. And I have to say, and we'll go into this in a later question, as I've gotten older since Twilight began, I like Rosalie a lot more than I did. When I first read the books, Amy and I were of a similar mind. But as I have aged, I appreciate Rosalie and feel for her a lot more.
Oh no, I've liked her a lot. I liked her more back then.
Oh, getting hot in here. Heather.
Dang.
There's so much tension in this chat.
I guess to.
If we were talking about Jacob, it would be like this for you.
Oh, you know it would be. Poor Holly's in the chat, and I know that she like loves Jacob because I follow her and I see her be like, I love Jacob, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I hate Jacob. But yes, I feel like, and this might go over. I have two things to say. One, I feel like when everybody consumes like media and there's like this whole meme that goes around that's like, I thought I was the happy peppy person in the movie, but actually I'm the super depressed bitter person. And I feel like Rosalie is that person for a lot of people where they're like, they grow up to be like much more cynical than they like expected themselves to be as a kid. And like, that's why you kind of like age into Rosalie, because you're like, yeah, fuck everyone. This is dumb. I don't like this. But I pulled a quote from Midnight Sun that I actually like had to go find. It took me much longer than I want to admit. But actually it's not a quote, but it's on page 269 in Midnight Sun. And Edward is basically having to justify why he told Bella that they're vampires. And Rosalie's so concerned. And it's like the only time I ever like, because I don't really I like Rosalie. I don't feel any which way about her. If you want to like her, great. If you don't want to hate her, it's fine. Whatever. Cool. Chill. But I didn't ever get like this sense of where Edward was always like, she has so much passion for the family. And like, you don't really get that from Bella's perspective because it's always just like, Rosalie's gorgeous and she hates me anyway. And you just like move on. And in the movie, it doesn't really talk about it. But in that specific scene in Midnight Sun, she's like super concerned that he has just like put them all in danger by telling Bella that they're vampires. And you can tell it comes from a place of not like selfishness, but like actually because she doesn't want her family to be like have to move around or to have Emmett do other stuff or Alice or whatever. Like she really wants to keep the family as a whole. And like as much as she hates this life, she loves what she has. And that was like a really nice awakening for me with her, where I was like, yeah, see, I get it. Like you're like this, but you're like this for very specific reasons. And you do have that humanity side to you that is sweet and nice and caring. You just only give it to certain people, which is fair. I probably would do the same thing. That's my story.
And I think we need to remember that for when we're talking about some things about Rosalie later too. I feel like almost this discussion in the way that in trying to figure out how we're going to talk about this, everything that I wanted to say about, or that I know that I want to say about Rosalie, like feeds in and piggybacks on other questions. Which as little screen time as she gets or book time as she gets, I feel like there's a complexity to the negativity that all just like builds up for her. So we might come back to what you just said, Heather. Kat, what's your favorite?
All of them. It's so hard to pick. But I do have to say that I was really glad that they included her backstory. I think it explains a lot about her. I think it gave some new insight. One of the things that we don't get is a lot of in-depth for the peripheral characters. Everything's from, Edward and Bella. But I would have loved to have, gotten a novella about Rosalie and Emmett. I have so many questions. There's so many things I want to see, but getting to hear that part of her and her explaining and her coming to the realization, like, this is why I am the way that I am. Like, she admits it. And that's one thing that I love about Rosalie. She's honest to a fault. Like she wears everything on her sleeve. If you ask her, she will tell you, but she does have her point of view and her rationalization for everything. And so getting to hear her backstory and why she's so adamant about the way that she feels about certain things really came across to me. And I love that part. And it just speaks volumes to her character, each part of her character. And then seeing her go from Twilight to Breaking Dawn and the doors that are opened, to her character, I love it. And so to me, that all began with her telling her backstory.
So for me, my favorite thing about Rosalie is that she just really wanted to be a mother. And I don't think you get that a lot in YA books today. And the fact that she was robbed of that opportunity to be married and have kids, I love that, because I just feel like we live in a world right now, and maybe I'm delusional, but we live in a world right now. I'm around so many teenagers, and I hear so much from them. I don't want kids. I don't want kids. I don't want kids. I don't want kids. And I don't know what it is about the world that they're living in right now that they're saying, I don't want to get married and have kids. I don't want to get married and have kids. To read that she wanted to have kids. And that's okay. And that's kind of what feeds her bitterness through all of this, that she was robbed of her humanity and her ability to have kids. And that's a driving force all through Breaking Dawn. It's what connects her eventually to Bella. And even then Jacob, we have like a switcheroo for Jacob, all because of her love of kids and her desire to be a mother. I don't know. That is like her redeeming quality. She's not my favorite, by far and away, not my favorite, but he at least has that redeeming quality of wanting to be a mother. And so I guess it's not really like a moment, it's a thing about her. And it encompasses a couple of different moments. Any comments in the chat that we need to?
Becca said, what would Twilight be like if Rosalie wasn't in it? Would Emmett be gone too? And how would the story have changed?
Oh, well, that is a great question. Let's hold on to that. Let's get through our favorite moments and then go
like,
go into some of the deeper things too, because that will just get off on a tangent, because that is truly why I think Rosalie's there. And why she's so important. Okay, so your favorite Emmett moment in the books. Kat, what's your favorite Emmett moment?
I would have to say his conversation with Edward when they start talking about Angela, so that, you know, a certain person can overhear. It just speaks to Emmett. You know, he's fun, he's loving, he questions really briefly, like, why you want to do this, whatever, you know, but yeah, I'm down. And, you know, just to see him, like, that's just his natural self. And I love Emmett. I love him so much. I think he's the perfect counterbalance to Rose. And that's why they make such a great couple. He loves his life. He's happy. He's go-lucky. And I think that little exchange between him and Edward says about his character, that he loves his brother, that he's willing to do whatever, you know, and just selfless, you know.
Mel, favorite Emmett?
So that was my top favorite moment as well.
But a favorite moment, because it was mine too.
But a very, very close second was when it's also in Midnight Sun, and when he and Edward are talking about, you know, like, oh, like, who's messed up before, and he talks about how he messed up one time and killed a woman. I don't know what it is, but like I think it's just the way that Stephanie wrote him delivering the lines. I'm like, oh my God, like, you would be the life of the party, but also like you would not know how to shut yourself up. And I appreciate that about him.
Heather.
I want to say just like every Emmett moment. Like if Emmett is in a scene, I'm like, yes, dude, like you and me. But I really feel like my favorite part about Emmett is that he is the polar opposite of Edward. It's like when Stephanie was writing Emmett, she was just like, I'm going to take every quality of Edward and I'm going to reverse it, and that's going to be Emmett, and it's just going to be great. Like Rosalie was supposed to be with Emmett, or Edward, now she's with Emmett. It's great. And I love that he always ends up bringing Edward like down to his level. And especially in Midnight Sun when they're talking, I feel like we're all just going to be like Midnight Sun only tonight. But when they're talking about Bella and how he's like really conflicted about like what to do with her and everything, Emmett gets really serious and like makes some comment about like, damn, like that's really rough, dude. And Edward's just like, bite me. And Emmett thinks it's hilarious. And I just like love that, because I love that he's the type of person that he's just like, I could be sympathetic, but that's clearly not what you want right now. Like if you come to me, you want either the truth or a laugh. Like that's all you're getting. And then we're going to move on. And I just like love that about him, that he's just like, he's always there to be moral support, but maybe not always in a way that you need.
Cara?
I just love Emmett as a character overall because of his complete just don't give a frack attitude about anything. You know, he is there to live in the moment and have a good time, and you can come along for the ride. And if not, he will pick you up and you will come along for the ride anyway, and eventually you're going to laugh. I just, you know, I think Emmett is my favorite. Emmett's moment is not in Midnight Sun. I'm pretty sure it's Eclipse because I didn't go back and look today, about Emmett discussing what's going to happen about Bella becoming a vampire and how cool it's going to be and how he's happy that she's going to be a vampire because she's down with it. And then fast forward to, and I can't remember, Lori, because you're going to shoot me. I don't remember if this was also in the books or if it was only in the movie, the arm wrestling.
Oh, it's in the books.
So that's
It is in the books too? Okay. Just, you know, him losing and Emmett going back going, no, again, we're going to do this again. And I love him. He's like the Shep Rose, if you guys watch Southern Charmed, you know, he's just lovable. He's the big brother I always wanted but never had.
Wow.
Without the drinking problem, without the Shep Rose drinking problem, you know, Emmett.
That is the most accurate comparison I've ever heard to Emmett, and I'm obsessed.
Excellent.
Well, Midnight Sun. I was like, I'm not even going to go pick a section because I kept saying as we were reading that book, I'm like, Emmett has like moved up on my list. I love him. He just, every single interaction where he just kind of brings like the real world into things too. Like, yes, he has a sense of humor, but it's the levity that he brings to things. And like having three brothers, it like also there's moments where I'm like, it makes me think of like my brothers and those interactions we have and the conversations that we have, and that like I kind of feel like at any moment like Edward could be like, yo, let's talk, like I need to talk to somebody, I can talk to Emmett about whatever, and he'll listen and he'll like hear me but also like advise me the like right way, or you know, he'll give me what I need. And I kind of feel like that's the case with some, you know, with my brothers. Like I could call up, we could not talk for 6 months and we could get on the phone and talk for 4 hours. Like, I feel like Emmett's that kind of person too. And it makes him super enjoyable. And, you know, said he is high on my Cullen family rank.
I feel like Emmett is the most human of them. And he's like the most normal of them. And someone was talking about that they wished in the chat, they were saying, I wish we had his backstory. His backstory was like, I'm having a life. Oh, there's a bear. Damn, there's a beautiful woman. Okay.
Now I run fast.
He's just chill. He's like, okay, all right. I love the little bit of tidbit that we know about him, that he went back and after he was turned into a vampire, he left some money on his family's doorstep and then went on with his life. And he's like, took care of my human family. Now I'm going to live my life and do my thing. And he's just like normal. And I feel like the relationship that he has with Edward is, if I had Edward's gift of hearing everybody's brain all the time, I imagine that so much of what comes out of people's mouths is not what's in their brain, except for Emmett.
Except for Emmett.
You don't have to, like, Edward doesn't have to work so hard and be like, wait a minute. Because whatever Emmett's thinking is what Emmett's going to say.
No filter.
And it's like the scene when they go hunting and he's like, but, you know, how can you like be with her? Be with her, you know.
I think also, Lori, one of the things you talk about his backstory is also that he came from a big family. And so he probably had siblings and stuff and had those type of relationships. So it's just like he knows to interact, how to like interact and manage things with siblings.
Right. All right. So my next question was, what's your favorite moment from the films? But I also kind of want to address how you think they were presented in the films, because I think that's just going to come up. Like what are things that either we lost in the films that should have stayed in, or even just the performances of the actors? Because what happens with any of these books that are wildly popular and then get translated to film is that we get so hung up on the actor who played the character rather than who the character actually is. Mm-hmm. And so do you think that they were portrayed really well by their actors, or is there something missing? Or, you can speak to all of that. Do you have a favorite film moment of them, not that of them together, but like a moment of Rosalie or a moment of Emmett, and how do you think it was translated in the process? So we are going to start with Heather.
I kind of, before, when I read that question, I had a very different answer, but as you were talking, I just like created 5 more responses. So I think all around, all the Cullens were not really portrayed great in the movies. I think there's a lot lacking. I think they did well with what they had. I think it could have been better if the movies could have been like 3 hours each, but like it's fine. I'm fine with it. Knowing that like it needed to just be like Edward, Bella / Jacob sometimes. I would have loved more though. However, with that said, I think Rosalie was really lacking in general. They just like, with the little lines that she does have, they just didn't do well with them. It was as if the people had not actually read the books that were writing for Rosalie, because it didn't feel like they understood her as a character. They were just like, oh, the sister that hates the new sis-in-law, whatever. It was dumb. I think Emmett, I know in this group specifically, because we've had this conversation, there's like some controversy on if he's like too silly in the movies. Mm-hmm. I personally like his level of silly, and I like his relatableness in the movies. I think that was important, because I don't think he would have come off in his like jolly Emmett way if it wasn't exaggerated. Just for me, because of how like little scenes he's in, if he like wasn't really punchy and crazy, you'd just kind of forget he was there. Especially where you have like Jasper, who's just like chilling and staring at everybody. It's just like, But my favorite scene is definitely in Eclipse, when he's fighting and he's like pissed that Edward like one-ups them, and he's like, again. And I just like, that to me feels like the most true to character, true to like the Cullen siblings moment that we get in all of the films, is just like that right there. Like and I don't even particularly like that movie, David Slade. We have issues, we have questions, it's fine. But like that fight scene and the training scene was like, it's by far one of my favorites, because you get to really like see the personalities of each of the Cullens in a way that you do not get otherwise.
Cara, how about you?
My favorite, first of all, I think out of Twilight, I love Catherine Hardwicke to death. The wigs, everybody's wigs. I think Kellen was the best casting out of the Cullens, because I think Kellen really just is like that in real life. Kellen and Emmett are interchangeable, because Kellen is really just a big bear, and he's the sweetest freaking guy on the planet. Rosalie, have we seen how gorgeous Nikki Reed is? Why didn't they just let Nikki Reed walk on set and be done and not try to adjust her? Because Rosalie painted up movie Rosalie was such a one-dimensional caricature of Rosalie throughout all of the movies. I just don't think they ever really hit it quite right. They got, closest during Breaking Dawn, but I don't think they ever really gave any real dimensionality to Rosalie at all during the movies. My favorite Emmett moment is still the baseball scene. Him and Rob running into each other and flipping each other off. My favorite Rosalie scene is, still in Breaking Dawn, or throwing the, where am I? Breaking Dawn, her and Jacob, and in the kitchen.
Or the dog bowl.
With the dog bowl. Thank you. I just totally blanked on the word dog bowl for a second.
How about you? I said Amy.
Oh,
like,
sorry. It's funny, Cara, as you're saying that about Nikki Reed, and I look across, I have pictures with me, with Nikki, and with Kellen. And I'm like, yeah, she's way more beautiful than what they did to her makeup. So I think, you know, a little bit what Heather was saying before, like, unfortunately with Emmett, he's a lot of times just handed like the one-liners that make him look dumb in the films. Like, you know, dating an older woman, huh? Like shit like that, excuse me. But one of the moments I love for Emmett comes late in the saga, is when they're on the field in, you know, staring down the Volturi, and they look back at him and he's like, I'm gonna go with Bella and Renesmee. And like, to me, that is Emmett. That is a moment that, like, absolutely, it's not him being silly, it's not stupid lines, it's not Monkey Man or whatever BS that is. It is Emmett being like the big brother, the protector. That is his moment there. And there's no lines, but it's perfect. Rosalie, I mean, I'm sitting here going, okay, what moment? I mean, I guess again, like, getting to see her story on screen. We didn't get that for some other characters. And like the fact that they actually did bring it to the screen, that we got hers and Jasper's in the clips, I really appreciate it, because we didn't get Carlisle's, even though it's in the book, in Twilight. So getting to see her with like the whole bride thing with the red eyes, like that was so cool. So
who's next? Kat.
so for Rosalie, it's the same scenes, but it's separate. I have to agree with Amy. It's Breaking Dawn Part 2. They're at the battlefield, and there's a look that comes on Rosalie's face, and she's clearly worried because this is her worst nightmare. Her whole family is threatened, and not with, you know, being exposed to humans, and she's clutching Emmett's arm, and she just gets this worried look, and then she looks at him, and just saying that, like, I get goosebumps. It just, the way Nikki captured that emotion and just that one expression just did it for me. And then again, Bella's walking with Renesmee and Jacob, and all she does is glance back, and there is no hesitation in Emmett. He walks forward. He's like, this is my job. I am her uncle. This is who I am. This is what I do. And I welcome the challenge. And it's just like, oh, you know, and that's one scene where it's just like that whole, I mean, I think that's the one scene out of the whole entire saga that I feel like everybody nails it without lines. It's just the facial expression. Because, and I know I'm going off a little topic, but going off topic a little bit, but even when Carlisle's head came off, I was like, oh, but then when they cut to Esme and her face, that's when I was just like, oh my God, and I lost it. And again, I think just those expressions speak to the core of who they are as their characters. Rosalie loves her family, she's fiercely protective, and this is her worst nightmare. And Emmett's like, I'm ready for the challenge, I'm stepping up, this is my family, and I'm gonna protect them. You know, and I love it. It's my favorite part of the whole entire saga, as far as movies.
Mel.
Okay, so I'm going to touch on the casting part first, because I feel like that's a huge thing. And this is one that's always kind of bugged me, as weird as that might sound. So Kellen, yes, I agree. Cara, absolutely. He was the perfect casting choice for Emmett, because he literally is just this big teddy bear. Like, he will come up to you, a group of people, and just be like, okay, who wants a hug?
Yeah.
Who does that? Kellen. But then with Nikki, it's so hard, because I know most of us have kind of been around for, you know, this entirety, and we were there back when it happened, that Nikki got a lot of hate. She got so much hate that it pretty much put her at a place where it destroyed her as a person to an extent. And I don't think that's fair for anybody to have had that kind of rebellion against her being the casting choice. And I know a lot of people brought that down to, well, it's because she already knew Catherine Hardwicke. That doesn't matter. Nikki is fantastic, and she is a wonderful human being, and she is so nice. And stop hating her. That's my TED Talk. But as far as actual favorite moments in the films, so mine's a little bit more of the hilarity with Emmett, because I think Kellen captured this part really well when they are doing the arm wrestling and Bella beats him. He's just like, he's almost humiliated in front of the rest of his family. And he's just like, what just happened? What? Like, this isn't possible. And I feel like Kellen's face, he just captured that moment so well. And then as far as Rosalie, hers does go to her backstory in Eclipse, despite how many problems I have with David Slade in Eclipse. I think Nikki took that in really well. She told the story, but she also was able to disassociate. And I think that's a very real thing for so many people to do if they're telling something that is that traumatic. I know I've had something totally different that's, caused post-traumatic stress. But it's kind of a flip the switch. You disassociate if you're not actually comfortable with talking about it. And I felt like Nikki just captured that so well, because she's kind of lost and gazes off into like nothingness. So I feel like that ended up, the more like I've seen that scene, that has over time become more and more my favorite, because I realized just how much she's disassociating it so that she can get through it.
About the casting, I want to talk about the casting too. I feel like Emmett, and to a degree Rose, but Emmett got what I call the Ron Weasley treatment, where Ron Weasley, if you've read the Harry Potter books, Ron Weasley is intelligent, and all of the things about the wizarding world that Hermione and Harry wouldn't know, Ron tells them. And they gave all of his intelligence to Hermione in the films, and then he comes off as just this big buffoon. I've never thought when I was reading Emmett that he was stupid. I never thought that. And then I feel like they gave him that treatment, like, well, we need some comic relief, so we're going to give it to Emmett. And so he has all of those silly, ridiculous lines. Whereas, yes, do I think Emmett joked around with Edward about sex with Bella? Absolutely. I wrote that. Okay. That's in my fan fiction. But do I think he was stupid about it? No. Do I think that it probably jokes around the most of the Cullens? Yeah, probably, especially with Edward, but I don't think he's stupid about it. You can't be stupid and get away with the lie that the Cullens get away with. And I mean, he's got to go to school and pass himself off as learning stuff, even though he's learned it dozens and dozens of times. I just don't think he's stupid. And so he got the rotten end of the deal, that he was given all of these kind of dumb lines. And with Rosalie, I feel almost a little bit the opposite. How do you portray the most beautiful woman ever? Because that's how she's written in the book. Right. How do you take on being the most beautiful woman ever, who's also the most negative at the same time? And I remember her getting so much flack. I remember Nikki getting so much flack. And the first time that I met Nikki, as like actually had time to get to know Nikki at all, was here in Nashville. She was at the convention, the first convention here in Nashville. And she was fantastic. She like vaulted to one of my favorite actors in the series. She was so personable. And she sat there extra time to sign autographs and to make sure that everybody got their time. And they gave her the worst salad. It was like brown and wilted. And she was like, can I have another one? And she was so polite about it. She wasn't a diva or nasty at all. She was wonderful. And I felt so badly for her that people associate, because Rosalie has this kind of pompousness about her and the negativity about how she feels about her life. People put that on her as that's how Nikki feels, and it's not. So as for my favorite moments in the film, you all said them. It was either the arm wrestling. I think the arm wrestling is one of the scenes that translated very well from book to screen. Mm-hmm. The arm wrestling scene is just fantastic. I also like to see Rosalie with the baby. Any of the times, again, it goes back to the thing. I like the times when she's actually with the baby. I saw a lot of comments pop up in the chat. I want to see.
I just want to side note and say that Emmett going up with Bella and Renesmee, my mom read Midnight Sun, and like that was the only scene she was like, I cried so hard. Emmett is the sweetest person in the whole world. Like, she had like no feeling about Emmett until that scene, and now she's like diehard Emmett fan, like ride or die, will always love him because he went up with Bella and Renesmee.
Lines. We're gonna go for favorite lines that either one of them has said, and it could be a book line or a movie line. Favorite lines, and if anybody says that's my monkey man, I'm kicking you out of this chat. Okay. The monkey man line is vetoed right here. That cannot be your favorite line. So we're gonna start with Cara.
Oh, don't do this with me. I'm terrible with lines. I was going to say, I'm like, I can give you entire scenes, but I am terrible at specific lines.
Kat, I'll move on. Kat, your favorite line.
Emmett, just because it's hilarious, and it's Emmett when he tells Bella, I'm glad Edward didn't kill you. Everything's so much more fun with you here. Because it's true. It is true. And then for Rosalie, it's definitely the I don't particularly like you, but I don't hate you. Because again, she's being honest. She's explaining herself, and I think that is one of the things that, going back to what you said earlier, is really difficult. Just to play Rosalie, and how do you get that confidence without being cocky and conceited or coming off really witchy? Because I don't get that from her in the books. I feel like she, in certain regards, she's justified for the way that she thinks, and the way that she responds to certain people, certain situations. But it's hard because I think there's a very fine line where you come across as a strong person to a witchy person. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think that that sentence really gets that. It's like, no, I don't hate you. I don't really like you. You're not my favorite person, but let me explain why. But she does a good balancing act for me just with that line. That's why it's one of my favorite, and it'll always be one of my favorite Rose lines.
Amy, do you have a favorite Rosalie or Emmett line, or both?
For both. So for Rosalie, probably I was a little theatrical back then. That's a line I find like myself quoting. So, and in that moment when Nikki in the movie, just the little smile on her face as she says it, I'm like, all right. For Emmett, I didn't look it up, so I'm probably like getting it wrong, but the whole getting Ben to realize that, you know, he talks about Angela.
That's one of my favorite lines in the entire Twilight saga now. It's Edward, he's behind
you. Yeah. So that was that one is my
followed by the ever impressive Emmett or Edward line. Huh.
Oh, Emmett's so good.
Oh, okay. Were those your lines?
Those
okay.
are my lines.
Heather.
10 reasons why Monkey Man is my favorite. No, I'm just kidding.
Bye, Heather.
You're booted out.
I honestly I love that for the fact that it feels so like a private joke between them, but that's not my favorite. But I just like how she delivered that line because it's insane and no one should ever say that. So my favorite Rosalie line is she even Italian? Because it's just The sass at which she is introduced with is just, oh my gosh, it's perfect. It's just like, love it. And they're all just cooking and it's so awkward and I love it. Yes. And then for Emmett, I love, as I said, he could do no wrong. And I know Amy, I think specifically actually hates this, but I love his toast at the wedding when he's like, hope you get enough sleep the last 18 years. Because it's just like, it's so funny that they're sitting there with their whole classmates and like fucking Charlie's sitting there and he's like, hope you get sleep. Sex, but it's not. I love that. It's the best.
See, that line, I have a feeling that even though we all understand the innuendo about the sex, that Emmett truly was referring to the vampirism.
Right.
Yeah.
And didn't even realize that it was an innuendo.
No. I love it. I can't. I love it.
Mel, it's your turn.
Okay, so for Emmett, mine does go back to the moment in Midnight Sun, but I kind of felt like the line was a little bit of a double innuendo when Edward's just like, I haven't asked her out yet, said, why not? Are we lacking in courage? I feel like that was a little bit of a double innuendo towards Edward too, of like, are you lacking the courage to actually just like move this thing forward with Bella? Come on.
Right.
And then Rosalie, I have 3 and this is awful, but I have 3. So my favorite moment in Midnight Sun, even though she doesn't say it out loud, it's her thinking it, is her just going off and calling Edward every name under the sun. And it actually says idiot, lunatic, moron, jackass, selfish, irresponsible fool. And I can just see her like sitting there like, I'm so aggravated and this is how I feel right now. But then my other 2, they both come from that moment in Eclipse. So towards the beginning of it, she asks, do you want to hear my story? And says, if we had happy endings, we'd all be under gravestones right now. And I think that speaks volumes to who Rosalie is as a person. And then the other part is her ending on it is, you don't want to be rash about permanent things, Bella. And she gives Bella kind of this, here's your potential out and also something for you to consider because hi, you're still really young and haven't lived life yet.
Yeah, because all of the Cullens were young when they were affected. And I think Esme is the oldest of when they were turned. And I'm sorry, how many of you knew at 17 what you wanted for the rest of your freaking life?
I'm 36 and I still don't know what I want.
But you can't tell a 17-year-old that. You absolutely cannot tell a 17-year-old that. I live with a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old. You can't tell them that. They know.
But
and you're just old, Mom.
okay, 2 things. One, at that age, you decide what you're going to major in college, and I'm still working in what I majored in. So I made my choice. That's a life choice that you're making when you're deciding on a major. And 2, I will say Esme saw Carlisle when she was 16 and didn't stop thinking about him for 10 years. And guess, while things went wrong along the way, it worked out in the end. So I kind of feel like, again, you've never heard that perspective. Bella never, we never see Bella hear that perspective in the books or the movies or anything other than like the guide of what went on with Esme.
So while it is possible, it is
definitely not the rule.
No, but neither is anything about this part of the rules. So it is vampires.
So I'm saying in life, people there you have people who are like at a young age who know what they want, they walk that path, but then you have people who hip hop through life and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that. I knew I always wanted to be in legal, but I'm not an attorney, but I do work in legal. You know what I'm saying? So it's like at 16, 17, and this goes again, it's totally off subject, but to my argument about Jacob. At 16, 17, I was not woke. I was not you know, very compassionate as I am now, because I've learned certain things through walking life and aging. And I think that gets lost a lot, you know, with certain fans, is that, you know, they hold certain characters up to such a high regard, you know, but not others. You know, Jacob, you know, he didn't give her consent. He kissed her with that. But then you have Edward, who everybody stands and loves, that's controlling and taking her engine out of her car or whatever. So she doesn't, you know, so it's like, really, you know, I love these characters, and I really like when people put themselves in the position of the character. Let's not just judge from where we sit outside, but like really try to get into the mindset of where they're at. So that's what I mean when I say it's the exception and not the rule. You know, there's kids that know what they want and they stick with it, but a lot of times you have kids that, you know, like Jessica said, mess up and mess up again. And
Yeah.
But I think Rosalie's point is that once this choice is made, there's absolutely no other choice.
Yeah,
you're stuck with it forever. It's not even that, okay, you make this choice, and if down the line you want something different, you can change it, because we all can, you know, even if we make changes, you can. I knew that I wanted to work in theater when I was 17, but where I am right now is a little different than where I imagined I'd end up. But it's that by making this choice at 17, it's going to be different. You know, you're stuck right there. You can't make any other choices along the way. I think that's what Rosalie was trying to say. Did I ever answer the what are my favorite lines question? I don't think I did.
No.
As stupid as it kind of makes him sound, I always laugh when Emmett says, "I know the feeling." Always laugh. Thirsty. I know the feeling. It's one of the things that I appreciated about Breaking Dawn is that their eyes are black when they're thirsty. Something that we just didn't get in some of the other films is that their eyes were black. They were
in Eclipse.
Yeah, but it wasn't as I don't feel like it was as obvious. And Rose is it's the same as yours, Amy. I was a bit theatrical back then. As it, you know, with the nice. All right. Okay. So I'm trying to think, should I get into what I said was the nitty gritty, or should we talk about Emmett and Rosalie as a couple first before we get into that?
Let's do couple.
Okay, because there were some people that there were some comments over in the chat that I think are valid too. I'm going to skip down in our questions. I'm going to talk about Emmett and Rosalie as a couple, like what actually does keep them together. And I was trying to word it and it didn't word properly, but what came out in the chat I think was a little bit better. I don't remember who it was that said that they always had a problem with the fact that Rosalie would say, I would give up Emmett for my humanity in a heartbeat. And Emmett knows that. So what do you think actually keeps them together? It has to be more than just she's beautiful and he wants her and he dotes on her and she wants to be doted on. And the whole, I don't even know how to address the whole, he looked like my friend's baby. I don't even know how to address that. So I'm not even sure what my question is. What do you think about their relationship? What keeps their relationship going and steady all of these years? Okay. So we'll start with Cara. Can we start with you this time?
Yes, you could start with me this time. I think what keeps them together is twofold. And one, let's start with that line. That Rosalie saying she dropped Emmett like a hot rock if she could be human again. I think that is because of her, and moms don't take this the wrong way, her need, the fact that she was never allowed to be a mother. She talks about her humanity and living her life and but at the end of the day, it's because she really missed out on being a mom and she feels that was robbed from her. And Bella at 18 can't understand that. And when I started reading these books, I was a newlywed who had I was just 30. I was newlywed, and every conversation I had with my family was about, when are you getting pregnant? When are you going to have babies? When are you going to do this? And so I thought Rosalie was also just so baby brained. She wasn't thinking about anything else. And I was like, God, I don't need to read this in a book too now, originally. So I think Emmett that was a side note, but Emmett stays with Rosalie because I think he's her human translator. I think he sees a much softer and more vulnerable side of Rosalie every day than Rosalie lets the rest of the world see. Rosalie purposely, she puts up a front, and yes, she absolutely is bitchy and keeps everyone up, but she puts up a wall to keep herself safe from everyone else. And I think Emmett is the only one that really sees the true side of her most of the time. And I think Rosalie in reality stays with Emmett is because I think if she thinks of Emmett as her protector, and the way Emmett is portrayed in the movies, it's kind of like having a baby, because the way they portrayed Emmett in the movies is just such a goofball that I don't know that you would trust him to boil water on his own. But I think that's kind of what it is.
Okay, Heather.
So I literally my first note for this is, he is a child. And I mean this in the nicest way.
Exactly.
Men, when you date them, when you marry them, when you hang out with them, they're all different kinds. Some of them act like children. Emmett is a child. He's the type of guy that you'd be hanging out with, and he'd be like, I bet I could jump off that building. And you'd be like, could you not? And he'd be like, I'm gonna do it anyway. And he would do it. And especially as a vampire, he's just gonna do dumb stuff, and she's gonna have to take care of him. So I do think that a huge part of their relationship is she can take care of him. And the kind of flip side of that is he lets her, and he doesn't probe, because he's not Edward, he's not Carlisle, he's not Alice. He's not trying to get into her head and tell her all the ways that she needs to be fixed. And the reason that she can say, I really wish I had this other life, and he can take that objectively, is because he knows that it has nothing to do with him. It's not personal. He's not going to try to get down to the nitty gritty of her. I don't necessarily think they sit down and have deep heart to hearts. I think a lot of their emotional connection is sexual, and I think that's what works for them. And I think it works for Rosalie because she can stay a little bit more detached and kind of and keep herself a little bit more grounded in the fact that she's I didn't choose this, but because I'm choosing to be sexually active with this person, to take care of them, to have them in my life. It gives the control freak side of her some stability, I guess. And I think him being so happy-go-lucky is why they work. She could never be with someone who was let's sit down and talk about why you don't have children. She'd be get out of my life. I hate you forever. She could not. And she couldn't have someone like Edward be so I saw you were thinking about your ex. She'd be no. To me, it's just the best of both worlds for them, because they are opposites, but they also just have this common ground that they can live on together and keep each other happy in a way that's not disruptive to their jumping on buildings or crying over past lives.
Mel?
Okay, so this might sound strange. I do think there is a very small part of Rosalie that sometimes might lightly regret having Emmett changed. And that's why she keeps coming back to it, because she's I'm the one that now forced this life on him. Shit. I get that a huge part of that obviously was because of Henry. And because then it did kind of bring back maybe that little bit of semblance of humanity and being able to consistently remember her best friend Vera. But I think there might be some little sense of regret that she forced that life on somebody else as well. But I think along with, Heather, yes, they do balance each other out, where Emmett doesn't probe about those things, where I think for them as a couple, that gives Rosalie the ability then to just be you know what, hey, let's sit down. I'm going to tell you a story. Because he's not forcing her to be somebody that she doesn't want to be. He's not saying like, come on, like, I know this crap happened to you, where, Carlisle, Esme, and Edward all knew exactly what happened to her after it had happened to her, knew her very briefly beforehand. Emmett had no clue before that. And I think then because he allowed her to just have that time and like, if she ever wants to tell me, she can tell me. Great, cool. If not, whatever. Like, this is our life going forward. I don't think he cares so much about the past, but I feel like he also helped heal her from the past because he didn't know.
I feel like I need to be taking notes because I have things that I want to say to each and every single thing that you guys are saying. Kat, how about you?
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think Mel touched on it the most. I don't think that when she saw Emmett and said he reminded me of my friend's son, that it was like an attraction thing. I think that he reminded her of humanity. He reminded her of life and the life that she could have had. And the fact that when she saw the baby, he was so young, and she sees this life and vitality in Emmett, that she was like, he doesn't deserve to have this ending. I'm going to be selfish because I want life. I want this life to continue. And I think that there is a genuine love and a friendship there. He doesn't treat her with kitty gloves. He's not trying to fix a broken porcelain doll. Like Mel said, Carlisle feels guilty for changing her because he knows how she feels. Esme relates to her in certain regards to, the abusive relationship. Edward feels guilty because he didn't, fall in love with her, and he understands how she feels, and there's that kind of relationship there. So when Emmett comes along, it's just like, she is who she is, and yeah, she's beautiful, but there's something more there. And Heather touched on it earlier too, when she calls him my monkey man. They have like this, this sidebar relationship, and just like any relationship, I have, little nicknames or things I can toss out to my husband that'll be random things to everybody else, but he and I know. And one thing that I didn't come across in the movies that really came across in the books, they're always going on honeymoons and they're breaking houses and stuff. And yeah, that's good. But, I think that happens more, not just in a physical relationship, but when you're passionate about somebody, you know them and you're in love with them. And I think that they're opposites in that regard. But I think that, yeah, there's a deep-seated love and friendship that hasn't gotten explored. And so the one thing that I really wanted, again, if we could get a novela, would be the moment where he's coherent after changing, and how that whole interaction took place, and then how their relationship developed from there. I don't think it's just sex. I think there's something really deep there. And when he hears her say, that she would want kids, it goes back to how she was raised. We know vampires change very slowly over a long period of time. And she was groomed to be a wife. She was groomed to run a household. And so she has that with Emmett now, but she'll never know what it is to raise a child. And that's something that she wanted in her human life, that it's like you want something, but when you know there's absolute certainty that you can't have it, there's a sense of mourning and loss that comes with that.
So lots of thoughts. First of all, I mean, from the perspective of Emmett, a couple people were saying about Emmett, like, not probing. I think in Midnight Sun, we learned the exact opposite, that but unfortunately he can't probe because she's got so many, he's constantly asking Edward, like, what's going on? Like, are you going to tell me what she's thinking? Because it must be frustrating to him to like not be able to have a conversation with his wife about what she's going through. So there's that. I don't know. I think Emmett would be so much happier if he was just like, I'm gonna go with Tanya. I think they would be so much better together.
Agreed.
So much better together. Like hot sex, like she's fun, like they would be so much happier. There's
Tanya's too happy with humans.
What's that?
Tanya's too happy with humans.
Oh, she would be really good though with Emmett. She'd be happy. So the whole like oh, Henry, baby thing. I'm going to save this guy because he reminds me of this child, which I'm like, seems kind of like, was she like imprinting on Henry? Like, is it all like making that sort of accepting? So like when all these people are obsessed with children that apparently they're going to marry one day, like, is it okay? Yeah, that whole, the part of it is when people are like, well, why do they work together? Because you don't see it much at all of them connecting in the books, in the movies. They're just kind of like, okay, they're together, but we don't really know a lot about that. What we do know is that she saw him, this bloody guy in the woods, 100 miles from her family's house, and she's like, oh, yeah, there was just something in his face remind me of this infant. Oh, by the way, the infant that we know the name of, while we still don't know that like Esme was married or what the name of her kid was, but her friend's baby we know. So in that moment, she, is like, okay, I'm gonna save him for that. So, but in Emmett's mind, Emmett's like, this beautiful woman, this angel is carrying me somewhere, and he's like, this guy must be God, which is Carlisle. And I'm like, so all these thoughts and feelings are in him when he's changed. So is the permanence then attached to, well, I thought this angel that was carrying me along was the most beautiful thing in the world. So therefore I then connected to her because everything freezes in time, apparently, in who I am in that moment. So that's part of the reason I think he's just, attached to her. She's pretty and they have good sex. And that's about all we actually learn in the stories. Everything else kind of feels like headcanon.
Okay, so much of what everyone has said, okay, so about Heather was talking about how like he doesn't probe and all those kinds of things, and that he just lets her be how she is. I think that's a component of it. I like that aspect. About the, let's see, Mel was talking about, oh my gosh, I gotta try to pick up on what everybody was saying. Gosh, I said I needed to take notes. Oh my gosh. And I had a good thought. Okay, here's my headcanon with Rose and Emmett. What keeps them together? Oh, when you were talking about how she feels guilty about possibly changing him. And yet Emmett is the one vampire that really doesn't mind being a vampire. He actually likes it. And so I think that keeps them together, that she's guilty and he's like, babe, don't feel guilty. I get you forever. I'm happy. But I have this like headcanon that, because he says, he saw this angel carrying him. And so there was that falling in love at like seeing her and going, I get to keep her forever. I have this headcanon that at like one of their second or third conversations, they went out to like the truck or something like that, like think 1930s old style cars or something like that. And Emmett said something technical, like that we need to fix something. And Rose came back with, well, we could do blah, 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 blah. And he was like, you speak car? I'm yours forever. Because like she has this not what you would think is that would be this attribute to her that you would not associate with a beautiful Barbie doll type woman, that she is mechanical and that she has a brain that works in that mechanical way, and that she loves fixing cars and things like that, and that she's not your typical Barbie doll. And that even though that's what people see when they see Rosalie, that he knows that's not who she is. I don't know. That was a roundabout sort of a way. Did that make sense?
It's not Barbie at all. It's like she would be insulted if anybody called her Barbie.
She would be insulted because on top of it, Jacob would be using it as an insult.
Every time I see someone that says vampire Barbie around her, I'm like, oh hell, she would kick your ass. Like,
but just based on looks alone is what I'm going from. That if you just saw her, you would think of her that way. But personality and interests and capabilities and things like that. Take the vampire out of it even. Not Barbie.
No,
No.
it's not Barbie at all.
No.
And I have
No, we agree.
I have often assumed that what she saw in him that reminded her of the child was innocence. And I think that that is true about Emmett. There isn't innocence to him. It's not stupid, it's innocence. That the world just is what it is, and I'm happy-go-lucky any way I can get it.
But what do you mean by innocence? Because what we see in the guide is that, like, yeah, he ran with a wild crowd. He drank, he gambled, he womanized. Like, what is innocent about him?
It's more like how you view, like, I don't know. This is probably just me, and I'm sorry, Lori, I cut you off. But it's like when you see like a frat guy, and you're like, you just there's nothing behind those eyes. Like you're just so like, but they're not innocent, but they're like, they're just kind of there. They're kind of naive. I feel like that's the vibe that I get from him, though he is smart and like understands the world and is empathetic. He still has that kind of like, when I was a human, I was kind of dumb and just like ran around and like got attacked by a bear and like had a bunch of siblings and like probably just like fought a lot for fun. And like, he feels like he's got that like happy-go-lucky, which I tend to float into like innocence, which is probably like not exactly true if you go like by dictionary definition, but it's kind of like he's just there, he's hanging out, he knows right and wrong, but he's also just like
Either way. Yeah, that's why, he's like, have a dessert. Yeah.
I need a different word. I'm meaning not that he's not so much sinless, but guileless or anger. Like he
doesn't carry a grudge for anything. He just lives in the moment. Like nothing bothers him. Nothing from the past, nothing from the future. He just is.
There's not like this negative cloud. All of the Cullens, all of them, except for him, have this kind of depressive negative cloud over them. And Emmett's like, dude, it's sunny. Let's go get a beer,
Lori frozen.
She's frozen.
No,
she's just that happy. There we go.
Oh, you're back.
Let it go. There maybe it's, oh wait, it says internet's unstable.
Very judgy your computer is.
You're unstable.
As if.
More joy than innocence. Maybe I was picking the wrong word.
More frat boy than innocent.
I feel like Alice is just as happy. Yeah, but Alice is...
She has too much expectation placed on her.
Yes. And she places them on herself too.
Yeah.
She feels that she has to protect everyone all the time because she's the only one that can see ahead. But yeah, no, Alice has a lot of weight on her shoulders.
What about this? What about that?
His power though, like really helps him out for that. Like, I guess kind of Rosalie too, where they can like step aside and just be like chilling a little bit more so than like your Alice or your Edward, like where you're very useful to the family. Like Emmett's just like, let me know when you need me to fight. I'll be over here just chilling.
I'm your personal bouncer. Whatevs.
Okay, let's hit the big topic. Okay, do you think in pretty much every vote that I ever take for like who's your favorite Cullen, who's your least favorite Cullen, Rosalie is easily the one that ends up on the bottom of most people's lists. It's usually either her or Jasper that ends up being the least favorite Cullen. Do you think that is a true reflection of the character of Rosalie as herself, or is it because Edward doesn't like her and we get so much Edward in this book, and to a degree Bella is kind of like afraid of her, that we're through their eyes we're seeing what Rosalie is? Or is it flat out that Stephanie has said, I don't like her? So as that the author has written her that way. So is it the character that we're not having an easy time connecting with, or is it because we can't see it through the right set of eyes, or that the author just doesn't like her? I'll let Mel take this one first, okay? Because I know you're like,
So it's kind of a combination to me of all of it. I think my biggest question, which I actually put on my own TikTok, was, Stephanie, who hurt you? Because I feel like that's part of why she put Rosalie in, is there had to have been somebody in her own life that she maybe either had this disdain for, or she viewed as someone who she saw similarly to this character, where she's like, you know what, I'm going to write about them. They're not going to know, but I'm going to write about them. And this is how I felt growing up on how they treated me. But at the same time, I feel like it's also, which I know Kat and I have discussed, we did Midnight Sun discussions way back in August, that, you know, we discussed this whole portion of why you have to have this character on top of it, because if you don't, this whole thing is just going to be ho-hum, like, whatever, I don't care. There's no negativity. There's nothing. Everybody in the family's happy. Everybody's whatever. I don't think that they could have had that diversity had they not had a character like Rosalie put in. There had to be somebody in the family that was going to cause trouble. And, you know, they could have, maybe they could have used Jasper as that turning point, which we do get a little tiny bit of in Midnight Sun. But I feel like if they would have just had, you know, it would have just been Jasper. He doesn't talk enough to have anything come of it. Where like Rosalie, there's that little disdain from Edward's perspective, which then gets placed onto Bella. And that's why I think that was kind of that great moment in Eclipse too, with her backstory, is because Rosalie was like, screw this, Edward's gone, I'm going to go talk to her. So that like, maybe, just maybe, Edward's not the one forcing these feelings on her of how she feels towards me. So I think it's kind of equal parts of, we see so much of it from Edward's perspective, that's what we're getting, but also that Stephanie just placed that onto her as a character to be like, yeah, no, y'all are going to hate her because I hate her.
Heather? So
I agree with everything that Mel said. I will add that in all of the kind of YA fantasy that I read, which is like the only thing that I read, it always feels like when it's written in third person and you have a character like Rosalie, you love them because they're controversial, they say what they feel. Like if it's a man, you clearly love them forever because they're strong, bad man, blah. But like when it's a woman, you tend to like put these like weird kind of constructs around it. Is she being a bitch? Why is she being mean? All this other stuff. And I feel like with Rosalie, she got pigeonholed in that, whether or not she's justified, whatever. Yes. Mel can detail that more for you later. But I do feel like because Edward in Midnight Sun, you're getting it from he's all emo about everything. Every character is flawed and horrible in their own way. And she just is a bit more vocal about how she feels about things. And it's unfortunate to me that she gets so much hate in that respect, because I do read and I'm involved in so many other fandoms that it's like those characters are the most popular and people are like, that's my favorite. I love them. They're so outspoken. They don't take any shit. And then you get to Twilight and they're like, Rosalie sucks. And I'm like, okay, well, like you liked that guy though. And he killed a lot of people. So I don't understand. So that's kind of where I take my perspective on it. I definitely think Stephanie, like, as an author, needed like that movement of like that character, and so she was like, okay, who am I gonna like build out, and like built out Rosalie as being that one that kind of keeps the controversy up and keeps Bella a little bit like off center, because Alice is so sweet and loves her, and Jasper's terrified to kill her, and Emmett's just like the most wonderful person in the world, and then Carlisle and Esme are like clearly the best people in the whole series, other than Charlie Swan. But yeah, I feel like if the books had been written in third person and we did not have this like very specifically internal monologue, she would be perceived very differently, whether or not that was translated to the movies. Just because of how characters like that are usually perceived by readers, in my opinion.
Cat.
Agree with everything Heather and Mel said. And I think that it is a large part due to Edward's point of view, because cafeteria scene, the one person who would have gave us a scoop was Jessica. And when she was introducing them, she would have been the person been like, you see that one right there? She's a witch. You know, we don't get that from her. You know, and then Bella was scared of her, but when Bella needed somebody to be on her side and to be loyal, she's the first person she thought of. You know, so in that way, I think that, you know, it is very skewed because of Edward's point of view. I think that when you see her from other people and you pay attention to the minor characters and their interactions or what they say or don't say about her, that comes through more for me.
Cara?
I think that Stephanie hated the cheerleader in high school, or, you know, or the cheerleader or the prom queen picked on her. And that's why Rosalie was created originally. You know, so I think that's who hurt Stephanie. I think she was, you know, she was the brunette and she was never the blonde, sparkly cheerleader, and that wasn't her thing. And so growing up as that myself, you have an instant resentment for the cheerleader, whether they're nice or not, but usually they're not. But I think completely we don't see Rosalie's whole story because we do only hear it, especially now, you know, just with rereading Midnight Sun. It all comes out of Edward's head. It's all his POV. And I don't like him that much after this book, to be brutally honest. I think that Edward is controlling of everybody in every situation. A lot more. And again, you know, this is not what I thought when I first read the books. So I think Rosalie takes a lot of slack because Rosalie takes a lot of hell because Stephanie didn't like her when she wrote her, but she needed to be there as a foil. She's the ultimate foil for Bella. You know, Bella's small and awkward and brunette and dull and mousy, and, you know, or that's how she feels about herself. And Rosalie is supposedly the most beautiful creature that ever graced the face of the earth, which Nikki Reed totally holds up to. Unfortunately, that wig never did. But you know, I think that Bella needed a foil. She needed an exact opposite. And Rosalie, as the vampire queen, basically, as far as we go through, you know, 3 books of Rosalie being the pan-ultimate until we find out and see the other vampires to know that there are other ones that might be as beautiful in different ways. So I think Rosalie takes, as I got older, I think Rosalie is just taking a lot of shit from people. And she does deserve more credit. And, you know, it took me 10 years. I like Rosalie now. I would be on her side in a fight. That's the Twilight Mom stance. I'm out.
All right, Amy.
Why do you keep putting me last?
Because of your face. You just look at
I'm last. I always put myself last. I always let everybody else get their own opinions out. I'm last, but I have a feeling you and I are gonna kind of side the same.
Yeah. I mean, I said for me, like after I was hoping in Midnight Sun that we would get that insight to understand like everything about why she is, that we would see more interactions with her with the family that were positive or redemptive. Is that a word? But we didn't. We actually saw who she is. And so like, I think we go, oh, well, Stephanie hates her. One of the things Stephanie said in one of the interviews for Midnight Sun is that, you know, here Rosalie was, she's like, she was, you know, upset or she was angry when she was changed, but you can't hate Carlisle and you can't hate Esme. So she put all of it onto Edward. Well, that's also not fair to Edward either. So to say it's all one-sided, like Edward's making her look this way or you're seeing it this way because it's through Edward's viewpoint. But the author has said it's gone both ways. You know, she put this on him too. you know, I kept, even like when I talk about hearing her backstory, it's like, okay, that explains who she is. Doesn't make her any better. Some people are just not nice. And I just think Rosalie is just not a nice person. It's just who she is. There's nothing I've ever seen that Stephanie has put on the page to make me go, oh, okay, like that's why, you know, she's continues to be like this for all these years. And I'm sorry, when we get to Breaking Dawn, she absolutely would have been like, screw you, Bella. I'm protecting you. I'm protecting your baby. I want that kid.
Absolutely.
And it's not like, I mean, we'd be like, oh, well, she went to her because she was, you know, protecting her. I'm like, well, because yeah, there was something Bella wanted in that moment, but Rosalie didn't give a shit about Bella. She didn't. She cared about, you know, that baby. And I'm like, that's just a selfish, awful person that Rosalie is, that she was raised to be. And like, she just doesn't, again, I was really hoping Midnight Sun would change that. I really had hope that I was like, we're going to see this. But even like, as Mel and I have been rereading it, we're realizing, I think there's a lot of headcanon a bit that like Rosalie and Esme would be particularly close. But we actually see like Alice and Esme not, you know, gravitate toward each other quite a bit in like we see it in Eclipse, we see it in Midnight Sun. We don't see Rosalie interacting with everybody else. So I feel like either she's getting angry at Edward over something, or she's off with Emmett for some reason. And like that is who she is. And I wish that like it would, you know, more would have come out in Midnight Sun that made me go, oh, okay, I get it now. Or, oh, look at how she's interacted with her family. Or, oh, I'm seeing that love for her family. No, I just saw her being a really nasty person over and over and over again. And I said, it's just, you know, we could say, well, Stephanie hates her. I'm like, no, Stephanie created this character to be what this character is. And it's not a matter, and like, yes, I know she says like, I don't like her. She wasn't meant to be liked, but that is the character Stephanie Meyer created.
But I'm gonna point out too, with Breaking Dawn, do we actually know that Rosalie cared whether or not Bella lived? Because we are only seeing that part through Jacob's eyes.
I would say Jacob is probably even more like open to what's going on than Edward would be, because he's not part of the family. He's watching, he's a witness to what's happening.
I will never forgive Stephanie for giving us a Jacob POV. I'm sorry.
I mean, okay, I will say the one moment that I think in that did Rosalie dirty was when Bella's giving birth and she freaks out. I didn't think that was fair to her. When they have to kick her out of the room because the blood gets to her in that moment, because Rosalie,
that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, Rosalie had always been the one to like, no, it was not going to get to her. She has never attacked a human before. She's never killed like from a vampire standpoint. So to have her lose in that moment, I thought that was really unfair writing for her.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else is she's a mess.
So I kind of agree with Amy that there are just some people that are not nice people. And even when we got Rosalie's backstory, about that she was so beautiful and that she, you know, she had everything and she was going to get all this stuff, I was like, oh, well, for you. I'm with Amy. I just don't think, even if she had lived as a human, I don't think I would like her as a person. I'd be like, oh, you have like the perfect life and everything worked out for you. Yay, go. And it probably does come from a jealousy standpoint of things. Maybe I feel the same way Stephanie did, but there are those people in life that seem to have everything and the beauty and they just get everything and they're snotty about it and a little bit more entitled. And that's what Rosalie has always come across to me as. And while I can be sympathetic for, oh, how tragic her life story was, Esme's life story was even more tragic because her child, you know, and oh, Esme's story has equal tragedy, and Esme's not a bitch.
Yeah. But we also never get to learn her story in the books.
Yeah. And so does it excuse the way that she behaves? I just think Rosalie has a bitterness to her regardless of what's going to be there. And Emmett balances it. The fact that she chose Emmett speaks a lot to her. And every now and then, when her kindness does come through, like when she says, "Thank you for saving my brother." You know, the moments that her kindness does come through, I'm like, oh, we took a little bit of a step forward, but it still just is
She's
never
on a journey. I think that when we see people like Carlisle, who has, shake your head, but I'm gonna say my piece. She's apologetic. She knows when she's done wrong and she has to step up and apologize. You have a girl who's been given everything in her human life. And so far to this point, even when she stomps her feet and has an attitude, she's kind of given her way. And so she's learning. And I think that's what Bella is bringing to her life. And so she apologizes and she apologizes sincerely. Then she thanks her. You know, yeah, she might have wanted Renesmee, you know, but the fact that she stepped up, it again goes back to her protecting her family. Because whether she views Bella as her family or not, she knows that baby is part of her family. And so again, she's faithful, she's loyal. And I think that at the end of Breaking Down 2, we're starting to see her journey come to a head. Like she's really stepping into who she wants to be as a person and who, you know, I think she has the potential to be. Again, throughout the story, yes, she is who she is. She has her witchy side, but she does have redemptive qualities that we see here and there. And I think that, again, she's a vampire. She's always been given what she's wanted. She changes slowly over time. I think this time, this is her journey. This is where she's going. This is where she's stepping. She's going to become a true Cullen in the aspect of like love and affection, but it's going to take her a minute to get there because of everything that she's gone through, because of everything that she had and the way she was raised. And I think that's what I love about her most, because I think for me, that's more true, I guess, to me and like my life. It's not something like where I had a bad experience and I'm so like in tune and so like, I'm going to sit down and break the scene down and figure out what went wrong. No, I stew in my emotions. I get pissed off. I put my wall up, you know, and it takes me a minute to get there. And I think that's why she resonates with me so much, is because I feel like it's just more human for me, because I relate to that better than I do like Esme. I love Esme. I wish I could have that reaction like Esme and be compassionate and be loving, but that's not where I go to first.
I would also like to say that I think Rosalie, in the way that she is as a character, is important to the story. That if we just had, and I can't remember which one of you said it, if we just had a series of happy vampires, why would they be like, oh, you don't want to be a vampire? No, Bella, you can't be a vampire. Even though we're all happy.
We're all having fun.
Happy we're satisfied with this choice. No. Oh, forget that we're damned. Other than the fact that we're damned. No, I think we have to have some kind of character that provides us with the conflict, because if the family just exists in happiness, there's no story there. And so Rosalie, not that she's the villain or even the antagonist, but that she does provide tension and friction, and you've got to have that so that your story, even in this non-realistic world, comes across as more realistic. So she's important to have there for that reason.
And I think what's important to remember, and I've said it time and again, is that each one of them is stuck at that point that they were changed. So she's still a teenager. She still has teenager thoughts. Whereas, you know, don't get me wrong, Esme is already an adult. So she's able to overcome those things, I feel, and see those things in a different light than Rosalie, who does not have those additional years after being raised to realistically be the family's like, she's going to get the man, she's going to have the man that has the money so that we can be provided for. That's how she was raised.
I do think it's also worth it to say, like, Rosalie woke up being a vampire and was like, who are you all? And I don't want to date him. Where Esme woke up and was like, yes, the hot vampire man that I wanted. like, that's a much nicer way to find out that you're like living eternity with someone when you already found them to be hot. Like, okay.
Conflict standpoint, I mean, if we think about like it all building to Breaking Dawn, I think if Bella had called Esme, she would have been just as fierce in protecting her. And in some ways, probably even more so. And you think about kind of like that family and the family dynamics. And like, as much as we go, okay, well, Edward doesn't like her. Edward's also lived with her for so many decades. Like, he knows better when we see Midnight Sun or we see like some of the perspective of things in the house and Breaking Dawn, more of like what dynamics are really like, as opposed to Bella being like sort of the new character to things. And I think that like at the end of the day, if something were to happen and Bella did not make it, Edward's going to say, Esme and Carlisle are going to raise that baby. I'm not giving it to you. If he was like, I'm done with this world, I can't live without Bella, I don't think Rosalie's going to end up with that child. I think it's going to actually probably destroy the Cullen family.
But I also want to point out that with saying, well, maybe Midnight Sun would have changed my perspective, I think we have to remember that that is Twilight. Rosalie has not gone on that journey yet. It's back to square one. So we don't know any of the growth that has happened after that point when we read Midnight Sun.
But you keep insisting that like they can't grow and they can't change. So how is she going on a growth?
No, I think they can change, but even it's mentioned that they change very slowly over long periods of time. Again, she's younger than Edward.
She's learning not to automatically go to that place.
And
I don't think that she's growing in the way that maybe you're considering growth, where, you know, she's never going to be a full out adult. But I think, yeah, what Kat said about, you know, kind of learning that slower, she's still that teen, but I feel like she's finally like gaining that place of don't automatically go there. Don't automatically go there. Like take a second. Don't just go straight there.
And I think one thing too that we need to, and this is something, and I'd love to hear everybody else's opinion on this. When they go into her backstory and she's talking about Royce King, she said, I was in love with the idea of being in love. But I take that too as, does Rosalie really truly know what it means to love? Because she was the trophy for her family. She was the one that was gonna provide sustainability and financial security for them because she was gonna marry into a rich family. And so you have to primp and, you know, get her ready. And so there was a certain weight on her shoulders that she was aware of, that she had to marry well, that she had to fulfill this role in order to get the little pat on her head, good daughter, you're so pretty, you know. So does she know the love of a mother? Does she know the love of a father? Truly what it is to have like that unconditional love of a parent, of a sibling. And so when she's hurt in this way, you know, and she goes into her vampire life and there's automatically an expectation for her walls come straight up. No, I don't want this man that's in front of me. You didn't give me a choice. And so she kind of digs her heels in the sand. But slowly over time, she's starting to get these connections with the family members and seeing how, okay, Carlisle is calling Bella a part of our family, and that might, you know, raise her haunches or whatever, but she's seeing that and how that walk looks, and how when she could have called Esme, but Bella chose to call me. So yeah, even though I'm selfish in the moment, I want this baby to live because I want a baby, there's still something that speaks to her relationship with Bella and maybe how that came across to Rosalie and how that's affecting her relationship with Bella and why she truly wants to protect her as well. And she tells, yeah, we see her saying, okay, Edward, I'll take the baby, but she's taking the baby, not just so she can have the baby, but so Edward can focus on Bella. That's the way I see it. And a lot of it is interpretation. And again, I think that because of the way that Rosalie is dealing with her past, and the fact that it resonates with me. That's why I see it in that vein.
Yeah, I had a feeling that this discussion was going to be the most divisive of all of our discussion. Kind of going off on what we've been hinting at a little bit. Let's talk about Rosalie's relationship with Carlisle, because I have always wondered, I've always wanted more story of the two of them, because, you know, Carlisle changed Edward, and then he changes Esme, and now he changes Rosalie. And while Edward and Esme went well, he changes Rosalie and it goes horribly wrong. Not only is she upset, but Edward is like, what? Yuck. And now they have to live with this the way that it is. And I have always wondered, how did they come to terms with that? Does she have a good relationship with Carlisle? It's actually perplexing to me that Rosalie stayed with them. You know, so
That's true. Yeah.
What do you think is the relationship that she has with Carlisle with regards to the fact that she does not like her life? Now, while Edward doesn't thinks that he's damned, and Carlisle says that he's damned, you know, while not all of them, none of them is like, yay, vampires. They at least don't hate the choice that was made for them the way that Rosalie so openly hates it. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on her relationship with Carlisle. And for that one, I'll start with Amy. What do you think?
So, okay, so yes, Edward worked out, Esme it worked out. But Carlisle hated it just as much as Rosalie did when he was changed. I mean, that's the thing. Like, he tried to, you know, off himself a million different ways. He hated what he had become. And, you know, it was only after hundreds of years did he, like, you know, make the decision to change somebody. You know, I think from when, I know a lot of people go, oh, well, he totally did it for Edward. And I'm like, when he's having his sort of panic like moment so the story is, you know, Edward and Esme were out. Carlisle like smelled the blood, found her in the street, brought her back, bit her. Edward and Esme come home to Rosalie changing. And he keeps saying about, like, you know, it being too much waste, it being, you know, and in that moment, I don't think he's, you know, necessarily saying, yes, you know, it is a mate for Edward. No, I think there was something else. Just like there was something that Elizabeth Mason said in the look in her eyes and in her face that said, there's something you can do. There's something about Edward. And I kind of feel like there was something in that moment when he saw Rosalie that made him go, after how many like people have died and probably in front of him being a doctor, that made him save her. And like at the same time as Rosalie's telling the backstory, she says, you know, she heard Edward going, like, freaking out. At the same time, she didn't like them either. Edward is, you know, going like, how could, you know, she's so recognizable. Like, how, you know, how could you pick her? But at the same time, she's like, yeah, I had seen them in public too. I didn't like them either. So there was always sort of like this dislike from the beginning. Now, as I said before, Stephanie has said that, you know, it's impossible to hate Esme and Carlisle, so Rosalie took it out on Edward. So, I mean, I think that there's probably, yes, things were very rough with Carlisle, but I think there's also this sort of the feeling of like that being damned a bit that he talks about, like being damned regardless sort of thing, that there is some sort of connection or piece to them, and that, like, yes, we didn't make this choice, and I'm sorry that I made this choice for you. I am sure Carlisle has apologized up, down, and sideways to her over the years, and that he's also been, I would say, lighter on her, because there's a moment when he's like, look, in Midnight Sun, like, you killed all those humans in Rochester. Like, I didn't argue with you over that. Like, I let you do that, but we're not going to just kill this girl. And so there's kind of this sort of like the life that, you know, Carlisle's doing the best that he can, I guess. Like everything in life we had to, you know, do with the choices or the decision. What is it? I just had to decide what to do with what I was given. And I feel like Carlisle has done the best that he can. The rest of the Cullens have all made those choices. Rosalie hasn't necessarily. She's still kind of, you know, with the bitterness, but I don't know. With Carlisle, I feel like she, in some ways, is at peace with him because she's also translated a lot of that anger onto Edward. It's a long answer, but I feel like, again, based on what Stephenie Meyer said, is that I feel like at some point between probably her getting along with Esme and being able to, like, Esme, I think also probably helped guide her to understand Carlisle better. But that, you know, that if it's like, okay, well, if Esme's married to him, as good as she is, there must be something good about Carlisle, where she doesn't kind of have that frame of reference for Edward. And said she's kind of put all this on to Edward, again, Stephenie Meyer's words. So yeah, I have, like said, they probably still have it out a little bit. And Carlisle still has guilt. But I feel like there's a respect for each other at this point between them. Long-winded answer, sorry.
Kat?
I agree with what Amy said. I think that we know as an audience, and I think that Rosalie comes to know that Carlisle is a very good judge of character. And I think that in that moment, he was looking at her and saying, you know, there is so much waste and, you know, this is a life and I feel like she needs a second chance. And so I think she's appreciative of the fact that he found a redeeming quality within her that he wanted to give her that life. I think that given in time, she'll come to see it as not him damning her, but him giving her a life that, although he didn't want it at the beginning, look at where he's at now. He can help people. He's gotten something from this life, and now he's built this family, and he's made something of what was forced upon him. And I think that, you know, him wanting to save her and her getting to know that is one part of it. But I also think that she knows in the back of her head that had she never been given this, she would never had been able to get revenge on the people who did this to her. And so that might sit better with her. Like, at least I know that I delivered this justice the way that I felt it needed to be meted out. And so I think that over the years, you know, and the fact that she was able to talk with Esme, maybe have an aside with her, and Esme be able to love her truly as a mom loves a daughter and provide that confidence in their conversations to be candid about what happened to both of them and how they can move on from that and how they can live and love, because she does have this beautiful relationship with Emmett. You know, she was able to heal from that to a certain extent. And so I think that over the years, her relationship with, you know, especially Carlisle, did have a lot of respect built within it, but also love and admiration. And I think that comes through for me in the scene where he tells her, you know, where she's asking him, like, why should I do this? Why should I help Bella? He's like, because she's a part of our family now. And so just that little exchange, you can see the respect there. You can see the admiration and the fact that he said she's family now. She knows how she feels about family. So I think it's little nuances, little conversations here and there, little things that we see that if you put them together, to me, it shows that she does love Carlisle. And she does forgive him, even though when she thinks about it, a little of that bitterness comes back, because you can always forgive, but you can't forget everything. You know what I'm saying? And so, and I think that when she's taught, especially like in the voting scene where they're talking about why she's voting no, and she kind of puts her head down and she kind of glances over at him and she's like, this is not a life I would have chosen for myself. And it's like she's bringing it up because she has to be truthful with Bella and she has to be true to her own emotions, but she doesn't want to hurt Carlisle when she says it. When she says that she would give Emmett up to have grandkids, she's not saying it because she wants to hurt him, you know. And I think that every time she does that, she exposes a little bit more of her own self, and she's ripping that Band-Aid off her own wounds because she doesn't want to hurt the people around her, but this is how she feels. And so, long way of saying, I think that there's respect, that there is love, that there is admiration, there's a true family bond that they build over time.
Heather?
I agree with everything. I do think a large part of Rosalie's relationship with Carlisle is built, and Esme honestly, is built around the fact that like she was 18 in a time when you were basically with your parents until you were married off, and she wakes up in this moment and these two like parental figures are now there, and she's not just going to go run off on her own because she doesn't have the context to do that at that time. Like mentally, if she is 18 where she should be married, if she's leaving the house and now she has these, like she's going to lean on them no matter what. So like it kind of makes sense to me why she would like stick around for a while at least, and then obviously you become family and you want to stay together and you have like the specific lifestyle, and like Emmett loves being with everybody, and like it kind of compiles off of that. But I really do feel like a lot of her kind of immediate need for them, whether she liked them or not, was because she didn't know how to live otherwise. Like how terrifying would that be to be a woman who like can't do anything by herself, and then you're just like, oh, you're a vampire now, you can do whatever you want. She's just like, I still don't want to do that, thank you, I'm gonna sit here and you're gonna bring me some nice things to drink. Like I feel like that was probably that kind of like mentality. And like Esme was lucky because she had been so fiercely independent that I think if Carlisle had not been the one to change her and it had been just some random guy, she would have been like, bye, I gotta go find Carlisle, see you later, and like went to go find him anyway. Where like Rosalie really just like needed that stability at that time. Like she was probably so fragile from experiencing that, dying, waking up, like that's just like so traumatic. Like you're gonna lean on any sense of control that you possibly can. So yeah, I agree with everybody, and I add that.
Mara, anything new?
Well, I don't know if so much new, but yes, I agree with touching base on what Heather said, that Rosalie wouldn't have been in a position even when she was first changed, even how horrified and pissed off she was, it never would have come into her head to think of running away, because she wouldn't just be a woman out there on her own in her time, because that wouldn't be something that would, it wouldn't even occur to her, oh, I could blow these people off and storm off and do my own thing, because she needed that stability, because she would have no concept of just running away on her own. She would have a concept of running off and stamping her feet and waiting for everyone to follow her, but not, ever really leaving. And I think, we forget, or they, again, man, I'm sticking up for Rosalie. I'm going to go back and look at this now and be like, how did this happen to me?
Triumphant.
It really, I mean, seriously, you guys don't get it. Like in the past 10 years, I totally understand Rosalie a lot better. And I'm totally putting stuff on her that probably is not there. But Rosalie is not Esme. Esme is a leveling, outgoing person by nature before she was changed. She's an empath. She's caring. She's loving. She will instantly open her arms to everyone. And that's not the way Rosalie was raised. I think more and more as we have this conversation, she was the family trophy, and she was probably groomed as the family trophy, but not necessarily, loved. She was coddled as a child, but was she really loved, or was she just presented as she's going to be, the one to get us out of debt because we're going to marry her off well? And I mean, not for nothing, she was Emmett. Carlisle saved her life because she was raped and left for dead. I mean, she had a bad freaking day. So, she comes, she's already had an amazingly bad day. Her whole world has crashed around her. And now these pale people are telling her, hey, you're going to live for forever now. And it's a bit of shock. She's got to come to terms with it. She's got to deal with it. And yes, I know it's been decades, but, that's a really traumatic thing in life. That's a traumatic thing to happen, to have that be the last human memory you have. How do you process that as a vampire? And as an 18-year-old spoiled given vampire, it's that would be a lot to process no matter what, which is also why I know the rest of the family does reach out to her and tries to help her process it, but she just doesn't want to. She just is going to put her walls up and is, to her, I'm sure this is sort of the continuance of a horror show, except she did get to go back and knock off Royce, which, I'm sure would have been sweet. God, that would have been the most awesome thing. I was like, when Stephanie wrote that scene, I was like, oh yeah, this is totally what I would have done. This is so cool. But I think, Rosalie does love Carlisle now. She certainly didn't at first. And I think that's because of Esme. I think Esme is the bridge to Rosalie and the rest of the family, certainly with Carlisle. She feels, I think at this point in her life, and, Mel's right, though, we're going back 4 books, technically, with Midnight Sun. So I have this one image of her through Breaking Dawn, and now it, bounces back multiple years with Midnight Sun again. And I think that she's, Esme is the one that connects all of them. Esme is the glue that holds that family together. And they do, her and Emmett do leave for a while, and then they always come back. And, I think they always come back in my head because Rosalie wants to come back. Because I think Emmett would be like, hey, I'm cool. You want to stay out for another 100 years? Yeah, we'll stay out for another 100 years. We'll go back whenever. We'll find them. So I think Rosalie does really need that sense of family. She just is hard to warm up to it.
Mel.
I think everybody has raised really good points. I think another thing to consider is that she only had what she knew from her human life. Would you want to go back out in the world? Like, even if she had not been changed and she had still remained human, would she be willing to go back out in the world and abandon whoever it was that saved her? No, she would be looking to them to be some kind of guidance. She definitely wouldn't be looking to her own family because, I'm sorry, but screw her parents.
Not really.
They didn't need to raise her as a trophy, but they did. But then, Emmett comes along less than 3 years later. So she's only a year and a half removed from being a newborn herself. That why would she then ask for Emmett to be changed, but then turn around and leave the family?
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't, because she knows that she couldn't make it on her own in that first year. She knows that it's going to be the same for Emmett, and Emmett's going to follow her wherever the heck she goes. So I think that's kind of why, at least in the beginning, she's definitely stayed. Yes, they had those times. They went off. They were their own couple. They were their own entity. I don't think she would have turned. She never, to me, seemed like that type of person that would turn towards the other lifestyle of killing other humans, because she knows what it's like. So I don't think she ever would have turned towards that. And I also don't think, the Denali coven is the only other coven that we know that is vegetarian. I don't think she would have turned to them either, just based off of not wanting to compete with Tanya or wanting to compete potentially with Kate, who are both single. I don't think she really probably cared about Irina. Whatever, Irina's Irina. I don't care about her either. She can be yeeted off a cliff. That's fine. But I feel like there was, she wouldn't have gone that way because she wouldn't have wanted to have that competitiveness where she's already questioning certain things about her life. Anyway, so to go back to then Carlisle, I think, yes, Esme is that bridge, that Esme has that life experience of being, again, an adult already. She also saw those other things before she got changed. So she already knew what those sorrows were that she could then help Rosalie. And I think that bridged the gap to then maybe not fully forgiving Carlisle, but for, forgiving him to an extent of, you know what? No, maybe I'm okay with this. There's still certain things I'm not okay with, but maybe I'm a little bit more okay with this because I now have a mother who isn't just looking at me as the trophy of the family to go catch everybody else. I have somebody who actually cares and who wants to see me go forward. So I think I think Esme definitely bridged that gap. I don't know that she's ever going to full out forgive Carlisle for it, but I think she sees those little things where she used to have that wall built up so high that Esme's been able to chip away little tiny piece by little tiny piece to bring that down.
Yeah, I love the idea or the reminder that it was a different time when Rosalie was changed. And she, Esme had made the choice to leave her husband with and take her child with her and tried to live on her own, as difficult as that was. And she was, a little bit older than Rosalie. Rosalie had nothing of that. And so to wake up changed as a vampire, even with her vampire skills, or abilities, of like supernatural hearing and things like that, I don't think that Rosalie would have survived very long on her own or very well on her own. And then once she got Emmett, I think Emmett's love of his family, even more than we keep talking about that Rosalie has this great love for her family. I think Emmett really enjoys his family too. And that really keeps them together. I'm not even sure if it's Rosalie that says, hey, let's go back. I bet you it's Emmett that's like, come on, let's go back. I miss them. Whenever they're off on their own, I bet you it's Emmett. Let's go back. Plus, I also think Rosalie not only bonds with Esme, we talk about having a mother that doesn't treat her like a trophy. I think she bonds with Esme over their backstories, over the abuse that they suffered that brought them to how they ended up being changed as vampires. That would be a really interesting conversation when Rosalie learns what all had happened to Esme. Of course, we as fans should have that conversation too about what happened to Esme, right, Amy? Because it's never in the book.
It's never in the book. None of it is in the book. Esme, for all we know, people's headcanons out there are probably still like, oh, Esme must have been a knocked up prostitute, because we don't know any different from the books. She was like Fontaine.
I don't know anybody who thinks that.
I have a couple more questions, but we've been at this for 2 hours, so I'm going to take it to our last question.
Okay.
Is there a missing moment or something that you wish you could see from either Rosalie or Emmett that we haven't read or they didn't add into the movies or something? Is there something that you wish you could see from them? Is that how did I word that? A missing moment, your biggest question about the two of them, or the missing moment that you most want to see? So we're gonna start with Heather.
Ooh, this is another one that I had like so many different answers, and then as we've talked, I'm like, I've changed my mind like 800 times. I honestly, now I'm gonna say this because I feel like everybody else is gonna have really like legit answers, so I'm gonna go kind of like a little funny. Thinking about them being away, whether it's on a honeymoon or whatever, and just thinking about how I picture Emmett as like the child, as I mentioned earlier, and how Rosalie must just get really exhausted being just with him 24/7, where he like has so much energy, he has stuff he wants to do, he wants to play, he's like a puppy, like he just got stuff. And I feel like she must just be like, I don't want to do that, so we need to go get Carlisle. Like that's just kind of, and I wish we could see that. Like I want to see them just like chilling at Isle Esme and her just being like, we need to go home. Like you clearly need to play with your boys. Like I don't have enough like energy for this right now. And I just want to go off by myself. And like I probably am like taking that to the extreme, but it's just how I imagine them. And I just always want those like little tiny, I mentioned it in the chat earlier and people were agreeing, like the big brother moments. Like I want to see just like a live feed of the Cullen house. I will always say that. I always want it.
I'm going to break my rule because usually I wait to answer my question last. But because my missing thing is the same thing as what you said, Heather, but I have a totally different take on what their time alone would be like.
Love it. Go for it.
I feel like they would purposefully go out and Emmett would put her first and she would walk in the room and she would get the attention that she wants for how freaking gorgeous she is. And Emmett would be like, yeah, that's my chick. And they would be out and like I feel like even though the point is not to draw attention, that they would go into these weird exotic places and draw attention to what hot shit they are, because that is what, like, Rosalie likes the attention, and then they would go back and have the most amazing sex, and then lay there and have some conversation about cars or something other, whatever, mechanical or whatever, and then go out and do it again. That's just how I think it would be.
I love it. I'm into it. I also have this like weird canon where I feel like Emmett knows nothing about cars and Rosalie's always just like, oh, Emmett.
I love that idea that Emmett's like, oh, it's a blue one. And she's like, oh my God, it's an Aston Martin 62. What is wrong with you? And he's like, yeah, the little blue one.
No, he knows things because he's the one that put the.
But it would be funny if he didn't.
Let's try.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
So
That doesn't take a lot of skill.
it's true, because I have put a radio in a car, and if I can put a radio in a car, anybody can put a radio in a car. It did take me a long time, but I did put a radio in a car. Okay, Cara, what's yours?
I'm sticking with the whole honeymoon theme. I want someone to write. Well, I've read the fanfic and I wrote another fanfic of it, but I just want Stephanie to write the weekend of Emmett and Rosalie like in Monte Carlo, and just taking on the world, winning. I just have this image of Rosalie leaning over, being buxomous, and like just playing craps and having everyone be fascinated by her, and then her rolling a hard 7 and just like being totally ticked off, and then going and running the tables, and then spending an obscene amount of money eating the most ridiculous dinner. And I have this beautiful image of Emmett in the tux and her in some ridiculously gorgeous dress, and everyone knowing she's the most beautiful thing on the planet, and they sit down to this beautiful 7-course meal, and where do they hide it all? This is they just sit there and talk, and they don't eat, and no one thinks about it. Because what are you going to do with your 7-course meal? I can't really eat this, but. And I would also like to see a tender moment between Esme and Rosalie. I would like to see, again, like Heather, I think you're in the book brought it up, the idea of we want the Cullen family Christmas, or the Cullen family Thanksgiving table of everyone just hanging out.
I don't want to watch the Cullen family Thanksgiving because
not actually eat Thanksgiving.
It's fine, whatever. I'm okay with it.
Okay, Christmas.
Okay, fine.
Amy, your turn.
Funny, because in my fan fiction, I did have to write the conversation between Esme and Rosalie about what happened with Esme. So I put it out there. But I think for me, I always say, like, I want to see what happens between when they were changed and like Twilight. I mean, everything that happened, these multiple weddings, like, where did they live? What did they do? At what point did Rosalie what sparked her to become mechanical? Because we know the life that she was living in Rochester. It wasn't like she was getting under cars or fixing plumbing or things like that. Like, we go like, okay, like Esme was like on a farm. She might have had to learn some stuff. But at what point did Rosalie go, I want to start throwing wrenches? Like, what was it that made her take a step into that? What?
Headcanon. This is like
yes, guide
story according to Lori, that Edward said something to her about, oh, but you don't worry about it, you wouldn't understand this, and she was like, you want to bet? The next day came to him and said, this is how you fix that car. You blah, 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 blah. Don't tell me I don't understand it, you pig.
I just see her at some point too, like being like, I'm going to study mechanical engineering, because they can go to college however many times they want. And her one, like, at the same time, it's like girls in STEM. Could you imagine like Rosalie and like the 40s or 50s or something walking into your college class, like all guys, like to study engineering? I think that would be amazing. I think it would also be really, really memorable too. And the guys are still telling those stories today, like in their 80s, 90s. But yeah, that to me, like, it's always just intriguing. Like, how do we get from Rosalie, the girl, the, pretty, fluffy, whatever, groomed to get married girl, to like, I want to get under cars and I understand this stuff. And I just, yeah, I would love to learn more about how he got there.
It also makes me wonder what her relationship was like with her father, her human father. Did he do those things and refuse to share them with her? And she was always interested in it, and he refused. And now that she had the opportunity, she was like, I'm going to check this out.
I don't know, because he's a banker, wasn't he? So,
Huh?
He was a banker, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But
so I don't know that he was like playing with cars, or if they even would have had a car.
Oh, they had a car. I'm sure they had a car.
They did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who was next on my list? I think it's Kara.
Didn't we just discuss this?
Oh no, wait, it's Kat. Sorry.
I'm like, I just went through this whole thing, Esme and Monte Carlo. I'm like, we did this, right?
I have many, but my two biggest ones would be right after Carlisle changed Emmett and he's going through the process, the conversation between Carlisle and Rose. Because she said, this is the one time I was selfish. And so I think that's the moment that kind of changed their relationship, because now she's kind of understanding what Carlisle went through when he saw her. And so maybe that conversation would be like, I would really love to see that. The second one would be the first private moment between Rose and Emmett. Would it be pow chicka wow wow, rip the shirt off because it's passionate and we digging each other, or is it more of a soft, tender, now she's ready, romantic kind of type of thing? I would really be interested to like find that out.
Okay, and that leaves us with Mel.
So things I've kind of thought about is, yes, I want to see like all those in between years of between the time, essentially that, you know, maybe not necessarily right after Emmett got changed, like between the time that Alice and Jasper show up and Twilight. And were there times in there when Emmett and Rosalie stuck around? And then Carlisle had to make up, like, okay, so they went through high school. They're off at college. Okay, he's still in town because it's, you know, they have 10 years. Well, they've already graduated college at that point. Did then Carlisle make up stories of like, oh yeah, Rose is down working at, you know, this mechanic shop, and everybody around just being like, what? She's a mechanic? Like, I want to know if any of that stuff happened. Probably didn't, but I still want to know.
I think it would be fantastic to find out.
I also would just like love a spin-off series of just like Rosalie working in just like being a mechanic. Just like I always think of like the spin-off series opportunities of like Charlie just like doing like a little cop spin-off, and like maybe like Jacob and Seth doing some buddy comedy. But then you have like Rosalie, and it's like, no, you need to be like a mechanic and just like mess with all those tough guys that think they know what they're talking about.
But also, she had moments with Carlisle because she did study medicine and stayed abreast with all like the latest technologies. So again, that's that whole relationship and, you know, bonding time and healing. And so I think there's just so many spinoffs that could happen, especially with Emmett.
See, I think I'm starting to kind of see a possibility with Rosalie, that all of these things that she's gotten into, that she specifically went after them because the expectation that she wouldn't be able to do them, or that she couldn't do them. And she's like, bitch, yes, I can. Here we go.
Me roar.
A lot of Rosalie is proving people wrong.
We did like a WandaVision, but like the Cullens version of it. It's like each episode's their different era.
I'm very into it.
Okay, so is there any other aspect about Rosalie or Emmett that we didn't talk about that somebody wants to throw out there? Mel?
Stop calling Rosalie Barbie.
God.
Thanks.
I said that they treat her like that, and she's not.
No, but there's a lot of like merchandise and stuff people are creating that's like Twilight Barbie. And it's like she would so hate it. Well, I mean, it's like Barbie's like, when people call Carlisle daddy. I'm like, no, but Barbie I think is even worse for Rosalie.
That's me. I do that. Sorry.
I'm like, daddy. I'm like, no, I'm not calling Carlisle daddy.
Okay, what's worse is I did see a photo that Peter signed, and he signed it Daddy C.
I'm looking, I'm like, Daryl, would you
Not.
anything?
Heather's like, I need that photo.
Yeah, Kat. Like,
I'll have to go back and find it.
I'm with you, Heather. I'm with you.
Grossed out now.
And we need a monkey band series.
No. I wish I could tell you that I knew when the next time was that we were going to chat. I don't. This was a surprise that we got to chat, that because we've all been snowed in and not had anything to do, so we can put this together. I also want to say, if anybody's watching from Texas, I hope you guys are doing better. I have family and some of my very best friends in Texas, and I know that it's starting to melt, and so things are getting better, but oh wow, what a nightmare that whole situation was in Texas. I had all kinds of happy thoughts and prayers headed towards Texas. And if you're watching this, 2 years down the road from when we filmed this, Texas had a snowstorm. Okay.
context.
Thank you.
And I don't know what our next. We've gone through all the Collins. What do we talk about next?
All of our weird ships that we like me just like wanting Bree Tanner and Seth to be a thing.
Or Mike and Tanya.
Dr. Seth Clearwater, as I've established in mine and Mel's Twilight Tuesday.
Can we talk about the Volturi? I think we should talk about the Volturi. We should have a Volturi.
Mike Newton.
How about we have Jacob night? Heather, we should have a Jacob night.
Don't invite me.
There.
Don't. I will. I'm
How
gonna
about a human,
text it in the
then we should
comments.
have a human night. If we have to have a Jacob night.
If Amy can make it through a Rosalie night, you could make it through a Jacob night.
I will exclusively talk about Taylor and not Jacob.
Fair.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you had a little bit of fun. Thank you for sharing your comments with us. We will be back. I don't know when. I really don't know when. I make no promises.
You need to do a contest.
We will eventually show back up. You can always join Mel and Amy. What are you up to now?
We just did the first 2 chapters of book 2. So we're on chapters, the third
10 and 11.
Yeah, of the Jacob section.
You're in your favorite part, Heather.
Hate it. I won't even read it. I literally skip it. Literally. I read
Nothing
it
to see here.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
That entire section of the book was originally written from Bella's point of view.
Yeah.
Because I read it.
How much better would that have been? 1,000 times better.
I hear where all this anger comes from, where the hate, the hate fire.
For years, I said that I think the one thing she really truly does need to release is the part in Forever Dawn when Edward hears Renesmee, but from Bella's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
When Edward falls in love with the baby,
Mm-hmm.
from Bella's point of view, not from Jacob's point of view, because I didn't like that scene from Jacob's point of view. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. We should do
Bella, because Jacob loves her most.
What did you say?
So because Jacob's gonna love her the most.
Daddy.
Well, we're gonna sign off for tonight. Have a good weekend, everybody. Stay warm if you're still dealing with snow. I know I am. Got a lot of snow out in my front yard. Have a good weekend. We'll see you all eventually. Bye.